Your services are no longer needed." The words struck me like a punch to the face, and my stomach dropped so hard I genuinely thought I might throw up right there, on the polished mahogany conference table I'd personally chosen 3 years ago. 15 years of my life. 15 damned years shaping this company from nothing. And they dismissed me with 7 words and empty stares. I looked around the table at men I'd worked beside for over a decade, men whose kids' birthday parties I'd attended, men who'd called me at 2 a.m. to fix disasters they created, yet now they couldn't even meet my eyes. Except Warren. CEO Warren Blackwood stared straight at me, his expression blank but failing to hide the slight twitch at the corner of his mouth. Satisfaction. "My name is Maggie Lanier. I'm 43 years old, and until 9:17 a.m. that Tuesday morning, I was the COO of Meridian Healthcare Solutions. Before I continue, drop a comment telling me where you're from and subscribe for more stories that'll make your heart race." "We've decided to move the company in a different direction," Warren said with that rehearsed CEO authority that once impressed me. "Ethan will take over your role, effective immediately." Ethan. Ethan. Donovan, the son-in-law who'd been here barely 7 months, the same man who asked me last week what HIPAA meant, the same guy given a VP title the day after marrying Warren's daughter, Kira. "I see," was all I managed, my voice distant. "And when did the board vote on this?" I looked at Thomas, our CFO, who had texted me yesterday about our usual afternoon coffee, and he suddenly found his notepad fascinating. "Last night, emergency session," he muttered, one I wasn't invited to. "They replaced me with a 32-year-old former hedge fund brat whose biggest achievement was being born into the right family and marrying the right woman." "HR has prepared your separation package," Warren said, sliding a thick manila envelope toward me. "Generous. We're not monsters, Maggie. But monsters, at least, are honest." I didn't touch the envelope. 15 years, I said quietly. "I was here when we had 17 employees in that converted warehouse in Somerville. I signed our first hospital contract. I flew to Singapore with food poisoning to save the Eastwood deal when no one else could." The room turned painfully silent. I could taste their guilt, sharp and metallic. "We value your contributions," Warren recited mechanically. "But Meridian needs fresh perspectives now. The healthcare landscape is shifting." "Fresh perspectives," I echoed. What he truly meant was his daughter wanted her husband in a corner office. What he meant was I'd become too influential, too indispensable. What he meant was I'd become a threat. I stood, my legs strangely steady despite the emotional earthquake tearing through me. "I'll clear out my office." "No need to rush," Warren replied, with that synthetic kindness. "Take the day. Security will assist you." Security. As if I might steal something. As if I hadn't poured every piece of myself into this company. Weekends, holidays, relationships that crumbled because I was always working. I'd missed my father's last birthday to close our Series B funding. I'd postponed freezing my eggs until it was too late because next year will be calmer. My life had become Meridian, and now they were escorting me out like a criminal. I walked back to my office, past the curious stares of my team. My team? Not anymore. News spreads quickly in corporate hallways, a digital telegraph of whispers and Slack threads. Already I felt people distancing themselves, recalibrating loyalties. By noon, my closest allies would be sending Ethan congratulatory emails. My office, with its view of the Charles River I rarely had time to appreciate, suddenly felt foreign. The awards on the wall, the family photos, mostly nieces and nephews, no children of my own, the emergency heels under my desk, all relics from a life I'd just been exiled from. I grabbed a cardboard box from the supply closet and began the humiliating task of packing up. 15 years condensed into a single box, the nameplate from my door, the lucky pen I used to sign our first $1 million contract. A framed photo of our original team, most long gone to other ventures. All except me, loyal, devoted Maggie. My throat tightened as I reached for the small jade plant on my windowsill, a gift from my mother when I made COO. Growing steadily, she'd said, just like you. It had survived my neglect, thriving with hardly any attention, unlike my relationships, unlike my fertility, unlike apparently my career. A gentle knock interrupted my thoughts. Natalie, my executive assistant of 6 years, stood in the doorway, eyes rimmed red. "They've already asked me to work for him," she murmured, voice trembling. I told them I needed time to think. "Take the job, Nat," I said, surprising myself with how calm I sounded. "You've got your mom's medical bills. I get it." She nodded, tears slipping. "They're claiming you mishandled the Westlake acquisition. That costs are spiraling. That's why." She couldn't finish. The lies had begun already, rewriting the narrative to validate their betrayal. "We both know that's," I whispered. "Westlake is the most successful acquisition in company history." "I know. Everyone knows." She hesitated. "He wants your files, your contacts, everything." Of course he did. Ethan couldn't do my job without my entire playbook. "Tell him company policy requires a formal request through IT," I replied. "Two could play the corporate procedure game." As Natalie left, my phone rang. Unknown number. I nearly ignored it, unwilling to hear staged sympathy from coworkers too spineless to show up, but something nudged me to answer. "Maggie. Lanier," I said, my professional mask instinctively snapping into place. "Maggie, it's Josephine Vega." My breath stalled. Josephine Vega, CEO of Helios Medical Networks, Meridian's fiercest rival. The same woman Warren Blackwood liked to call that barracuda in a pantsuit. The woman whose innovations had been slicing into Meridian's market share for the past 2 years. "Josephine," I said cautiously, "this is unexpected." "I'll be straightforward," she replied, her voice sharp yet strangely warm. "I heard what happened. News travels quickly. I want to meet you today." My mind raced. Meeting with Meridian's biggest competitor on the very day I'd been fired would violate at least 3 clauses in my employment contract. But then again, I was no longer employed. "Why?" I asked. "Because Meridian just made the dumbest decision in their corporate lifespan, and I'd like to be the one who profits from it." She paused. "The Langham. 4 Harm the Tea Lounge. Come alone, and we'll discuss how to turn this setback into the best opportunity you've ever had." The line disconnected before I could reply. I sank into my chair, still technically mine for another hour, clutching my phone. Meridian had discarded me after 15 years of sacrifice and loyalty. 15 years of missed family moments, failed relationships, delayed dreams, all for a company that threw me away in favor of a man whose chief qualification was marrying the CEO's daughter. I glanced at the box holding my belongings, embarrassingly small for a lifetime of work, then at the jade plant, thriving despite everything. My phone buzzed with a message from security. EA 20 minutes for escort. They couldn't even give me the dignity of walking out by myself. As the initial numbness ebbed, something else rose from deep within. Not just fury, not just pain, but something darker, more instinctive. They thought they could shove me aside, erase my impact, and I'd simply vanish. Warren had always misjudged me. It was his fatal flaw. He saw me as the dependable workhorse, the faithful lieutenant who would absorb the abuse and show up smiling. He never recognized the steel beneath. Never realized my agreeable demeanor was a choice, not a weakness. I picked up my phone and created a new contact for Josephine Vega, then slid the severance packet into my bag without opening it. Whatever they offered, it would never compensate for what they stole. Security arrived. 2 men I had personally approved the hiring of last year. They looked remorseful, but resolute. "We're just doing our job, Ms. Lanier," the older one said quietly. "I know, Paul," I answered, lifting my small box and straightening my spine. Everyone was just doing their job. As we moved through the main workspace, conversations halted, keyboards froze, and eyes trailed my final walk. Some sympathetic, most cautious, a few blatantly ambitious as they calculated how my downfall might open doors for them. Near the elevator, I spotted Ethan standing with 2 board members, already acting the part. His tailored suit couldn't disguise his inherent mediocrity. He nodded at me with practiced solemnity, the expression of a man pretending to embody a role he never earned. I could have walked by, should have walked by with grace. Instead, I paused. "Congratulations, Ethan," I said, my voice pitched just loud enough to gather attention. "Quick question before I go. Do you remember what HIPAA stands for?" His face reddened. The board members looked puzzled. "I'm sure Ethan knows all about compliance regulations," one offered hastily. "Of course," I replied with a thin smile. "I just thought since it's the core law governing everything our company does, he might want to share it with everyone, for clarity." Ethan's jaw clenched. "Health insurance portability? And—" The last word slipped away from him. "And Accountability Act," I finished smoothly. 1996. I helped write our first compliance protocols. They're in the blue binder on the left shelf in your new office. You might want to read it before your call with Boston General tomorrow. They're sticklers. Without waiting for a reaction, I turned and continued to the elevator. A small win, but it felt good reminding everyone what they were losing, what he could never replicate. Outside, the spring air hit me like truth itself. 15 years entering this building, and now I was banned from it. My key card already disabled, my email already locked. 15 years erased in 15 minutes. I sat in my car, a sensible Audi I'd chosen to convey success without flash, and finally let myself feel the full gravity of what had happened. The tears came hard, unstoppable. I cried for my lost identity, for sacrifices that suddenly felt meaningless, for a future I'd once believed was secure. But as the sobs faded, that darker fire stirred again. A voice whispering, "They think this is the end of your story. Show them it's only the opening chapter." I checked my reflection in the rearview mirror, reapplied my lipstick, and started the engine. I had a 4-hour meeting that could shift everything. The Langham Hotel rose like an elegant challenge to Meridian's glass and steel rigidity, old money versus new tech. I felt oddly at ease among its polished wood and discreet service, maybe because both the hotel and I had witnessed empires rise without losing our dignity. In the tea lounge, Josephine Vega sat alone in a corner. At 55, she carried the assurance of a woman who had never apologized for her ambition. Her silver-streaked black hair framed sharp, intelligent eyes. She stood as I approached. "Maggie," she said, offering her hand. "Thank you for coming." Her handshake was firm but not forceful, confident without being overbearing. Everything about her signaled a woman fully at ease with her power. "I was curious," I replied, taking my seat. "And honestly, I didn't have anything better to do today." She smiled at the candor. "Let's order first, then we'll talk about how Meridian just handed me the competitive edge I've been waiting years for." We ordered. Earl Grey for her, espresso for me. I needed the bite. "I've followed your work," she said once the server left. 15 years crafting Meridian's operational backbone, their hospital network, their compliance architecture, their client relationships. She leaned in slightly. "You are Meridian, Maggie, not Warren, not that board of golfing cronies. You." Her words pressed against a wound still raw and aching. "Apparently not," I replied, unable to mask the bitterness sharpening my voice. Apparently, I'm replaceable by someone whose top qualification is marrying the CEO's daughter. Warren was always an idiot, Josephine said with effortless disdain. But his loss is my gain. I want you at Helios, Maggie. Not just as an executive, as a partner. I blinked. Partner? Equity. A board seat. Freedom to build without Warren's ego strangling you. She lifted her tea. I've watched you solve problems at Meridian that we're still wrestling with at Helios. Picture what you could accomplish without Warren second-guessing every innovation. The offer was audacious, almost unbelievable. But 15 years had taught me to be wary. Why trust me with so much? I've been your competition. For all you know, I could be Warren's spy. Josephine laughed, an unrestrained sound that drew glances from nearby tables. Warren doesn't have the creativity for that kind of maneuver. Besides, her eyes narrowed. I recognize something in you I know intimately, the look of a woman underestimated her entire career. A woman who worked twice as hard for half the recognition. A woman whose ideas were stolen in conference rooms and watched someone else soak up the applause. She placed her teacup down with surgical precision, and I saw in her expression the unmistakable arrival at a breaking point. Her words struck me like a revelation. She was right. I had reached my breaking point. 15 years of swallowing anger, of smiling through condescension, of watching my work elevated under someone else's name. It had hardened inside me into something volatile. What exactly are you proposing? I asked, leaning in. Josephine's eyes flashed. Meridian has won the Mayo Clinic contract renewal 6 years straight. It's up again in 3 months, now worth $47 million annually. I nodded. I had personally led the last 2 renewals. I want it, she said simply, and you know precisely how to get it. The Mayo contract, Meridian's crown jewel. I had built that relationship brick by brick, navigating implementation issues, outages, budget battles. I knew every stakeholder, knew whose kids played soccer, knew who needed data, and who only cared about results. My non-compete, I began, is strict but ultimately limited, Josephine finished smoothly. My legal team reviewed Meridian's standard executive contract. They can block you from joining us directly for 12 months. They can bar you from recruiting staff. But they cannot stop you from consulting for their clients. The loophole was brilliant. Consulting for Mayo wouldn't breach my non-compete if I played it carefully. And if Mayo then switched vendors after benefiting from my insights. Sheer coincidence. Still, I said slowly, why partner status? That's a significant offer for someone you barely know. Josephine placed her cup down again. Because half of something exceptional is better than all of something mediocre. Because I've grown Helios by elevating talent others foolishly throw away. And because, her voice sharpened, I've waited 5 years to see Warren Blackwood's face when he loses Mayo. When he realizes his biggest mistake wasn't firing you, it was creating an enemy who knows every flaw he hides. Her vendetta ran deep. Another reason to investigate later. For now, our motivations aligned perfectly. I'd need guaranteed autonomy, I said, already drafting demands in my head. My own team. No interference in how I manage relationships. Done. And a 2-year protection clause if the partnership fails. Fair. I inhaled slowly. Why did they really fire me, Josephine? You have eyes everywhere. What's the real reason? She studied me, deciding how much truth to offer. The Lindale acquisition, she said at last. Warren's announcing it next month. A $2.7 billion deal, the biggest in their history. But their security protocols are a catastrophe. Potential HIPAA violations everywhere. You would have noticed them immediately. Insisted they correct everything before signing. The Lindale Group. Of course. The flashy newcomer in prescription management systems, hiding glaring security gaps beneath a polished interface. I'd cautioned Warren about them 6 months ago. Ethan won't catch the compliance failures, I said quietly. He'll be dazzled by the surface-level metrics. Josephine agreed. Warren needed you out before due diligence. You were the only leader he couldn't pressure or sweet-talk into ignoring the risks. The betrayal cut deeper now, realizing they'd removed me not in spite of my competence, but because of it. I wasn't just inconvenient for a nepotism hire. I was a threat to their reckless ambitions. I need time, I finally said. This isn't just a career move, it's a full rebirth. She finished gently. I know. Take 48 hours, then call me. She pushed a business card toward me. But remember, your value is at its peak right now while your insight is sharp, and your window for... She paused. Correcting the injustice is strongest before they lock in the relationships you built. Correction of injustice. Such an elegant phrase for what I was considering. When I stepped out of the Langham, the spring air felt charged with possibility. My phone filled with messages from former coworkers, the brave ones, risking contact. I ignored them, driving aimlessly through Cambridge as my mind attacked every angle. I eventually stopped at Montrose Point, the little overlook where I'd sometimes escape for lunch when the office felt suffocating. The Charles River moved steadily below, patient and calm. Across the water was the Meridian Tower, its upper floors still glowing. Work continued inside, just not with me. My phone rang again. This time, a name that surprised me. Dr. Eileen Sawyer, Chief Medical Officer at Mayo Clinic. Maggie. Her warm voice carried worry. I just heard. Are you all right? Eileen and I had built more than a professional rapport over the years. We'd navigated late-night integration issues together, swapped novels, laughed when her daughter got into med school. Still processing, I said quietly. How did you find out? Still processing, I admitted. How did you hear? Warren called personally to assure me nothing would change with our service. Her tone made it clear what she thought of that conversation. Said his son-in-law would personally take over the relationship. And I told him we'd need to evaluate our options before committing to renewal. The steel in her voice was unmistakable. Maggie, we chose Meridian because of you. Your understanding of our needs. Your transparency when problems arise. Your solutions not excuses approach. My chest swelled with vindication. That means a lot, Eileen. It's more than sentiment. The renewal starts in 3 months, but we're beginning vendor evaluation now. We'd value your insights given your unique perspective. It was as direct an invitation as she could ethically offer. I may be available for independent consulting soon, I said cautiously. Once I navigate my transition. Excellent. My assistant will reach out next week, she replied. Pausing, she added, For what it's worth, Maggie, their loss is someone else's gain. Remember that. After we hung up, I watched the Meridian Tower as darkness fell, floor-by-floor lights winking out. 15 years of my life in that glass monolith. 15 years of achievement they thought could be erased. I thought of Warren's smug expression, Ethan's unearned confidence, the board members who wouldn't meet my eyes, and all I'd sacrificed for a company that discarded me like yesterday's coffee grounds. I made my decision. The next morning, I signed Josephine's partnership agreement. By afternoon, I had office space at Helios's Cambridge location, deliberately placed to be visible from Warren's corner office across the river. By evening, I drafted a consulting proposal for Mayo Clinic that carefully skirted the limits of my non-compete. 3 days after being fired, Natalie, my former assistant, texted, Ethan can't find the Westlake integration documentation. Board meeting disaster? Warren furious. I smiled. The Westlake files weren't missing. They were exactly where they should be. Filed under acquisition notes. Westlake, final on the shared drive. But without my institutional knowledge, without my mental map of 15 years of systems and processes, navigating Meridian was like wandering a labyrinth blindfolded. I hadn't sabotaged anything. I'd simply stopped being their atlas. 1 week later, I launched my consulting practice, meticulously structured with Josephine's legal team, my first client, Mayo Clinic. My project, evaluating healthcare management systems for their upcoming contract renewal. 2 weeks in, another text from Natalie arrived. They lost the Harborview account today. CFO panicking. Harborview had been wavering for months. I had been the one calming their procurement team, addressing concerns, keeping them loyal. Without me, the relationship crumbled instantly. I wasn't even directly poaching Meridian's clients. I didn't have to. The connections had always been personal, built on trust in me, not the logo. Meanwhile, at Helios, I was building something unprecedented. Josephine had kept her word. Total autonomy, resources at my disposal, no second guessing. I recruited 3 undervalued analysts from Meridian, timing their hires carefully to avoid non-solicitation breaches. Together, we developed a client management system that blended Meridian's best practices with the innovations I had long wanted to implement, blocked by Warren's conservatism. The results were immediate. By month 2, we'd secured 2 mid-size hospital systems that had languished on Meridian's prospect list for years, not by attacking Meridian, but by offering something superior, something I had always dreamed of building. The Mayo evaluation proceeded perfectly. Each meeting revealed Meridian's vulnerabilities. Each analysis underscored the risks of their new management approach. Each comparison highlighted Helios's innovative solutions, solving problems Mayo didn't even know existed. Then came the moment that crystallized everything. I was working late, Meridian's lights twinkling across the river, when my phone rang. An unknown number. Maggie Lanier, I answered. Maggie, it's Warren. My blood froze, then boiled with fury. The audacity. Warren, I said evenly. This is unexpected. I think we got off on the wrong foot with your transition, he said, voice tinged with that forced joviality he always used when trying to manipulate. The board has been reassessing the situation. We may have been hasty. Hasty? I repeated flatly. After 15 years, he cleared his throat. The point, he said, is that there might be an opportunity to bring you back in a senior advisory role. The team misses your institutional knowledge. Translation: they were floundering without me. The realization sparked a savage joy I made no effort to hide. That's a generous offer, I said, eyes on Meridian's building across the water. Unfortunately, I'm committed to other projects now. We can be very competitive with compensation, he pressed. Whatever you're getting, we'll beat it. I thought of the Helios partnership agreement, the equity, the board seat, the autonomy, none of which Warren could ever truly provide. It's not about money, Warren. It never was. Then what do you want? Frustration crept into his voice. Name it. What did I want? Revenge had seemed simple at first. Make them suffer. Make them regret discarding me. But building something new at Helios, I realized revenge alone wasn't enough. I wanted vindication. I wanted them to fully grasp what they'd lost. I want you to learn your lesson, I said quietly. But I don't think you're capable of that. Don't be childish, Maggie. This is business. Sometimes hard decisions. Replacing me with your son-in-law wasn't a hard decision, Warren. It was an easy one. The coward's choice. And now you're facing the consequences. His tone sharpened. If this is about Mayo, this is about 15 years of my life I poured into building something meaningful, something you were willing to risk for nepotism and short-term gain. I paused, letting it sink in. You didn't value what you had, Warren. Someone else does. That's not vindictiveness. That's capitalism. Isn't that what you always preached? After a long silence, he spoke with cold fury. You won't get away with this. The non-compete has been meticulously honored, as your lawyers have surely confirmed. I'm not working directly for your competitors for 12 months. I'm consulting independently. I haven't solicited your employees. They sought me out. Everything I'm doing is perfectly legal. I allowed myself a small smile. I learned contract law by watching you manipulate it for years. This isn't over, he threatened. Actually, Warren, it was over the moment you decided I was disposable. You just didn't know it yet. I hung up, heart racing but spirits soaring. His call confirmed everything. They were flailing without me. The Mayo account was slipping. The Lindale acquisition was likely revealing the compliance nightmares I had predicted. 3 days later, Natalie sent her most revealing text yet. Lindale deal postponed indefinitely. Board emergency meeting called. Ethan being grilled on due diligence failures. Warren's legacy-defining acquisition was collapsing under the weight of issues I would have caught immediately. Problems Ethan, with his hedge fund experience and 7 months at the company, had completely missed. That weekend, I received an email from Thomas, the CFO who hadn't been able to meet my eyes the day they fired me. The subject line read simply, "You were right." The message contained a single attachment, board minutes revealing that the emergency session where they'd voted to replace me had actually been scheduled 3 weeks in advance. Warren had lied about the timeline, about the reasons, about everything. Thomas had finally found his conscience, too late to help me, but just in time to witness the collapse. The Mayo Clinic decision landed exactly as I'd anticipated. Their evaluation committee recommended switching to Helios's platform, citing innovation, security, and relationship management as decisive factors. The contract, now worth $52 million annually, with the expanded services I'd suggested, would transfer when the current agreement expired in 3 weeks. Josephine was elated. "This is just the beginning," she said at our celebration dinner. "With you leading client relationships, we'll secure every major account within 2 years." I smiled, raising my glass. To correction of injustice. She clinked hers against mine. And to women who refuse to disappear when discarded. The next morning brought news I hadn't foreseen. Meridian's stock had dropped 22% on the Mayo loss announcement. Analysts were questioning the company's stability, and an anonymous source leaked to TechCrunch that the Lindale acquisition had failed due to catastrophic compliance oversight senior management had ignored. I hadn't leaked anything. I didn't need to. Truth surfaces when systems crack. By that afternoon, 3 more hospital networks had contacted me about evaluation consulting for their Meridian contracts. The avalanche had begun, not because I was actively attacking Meridian, but because I had stopped holding it together. That evening, working late in my Helios office, I received one final text from Natalie. Warren asked for resignation. Board unanimous. Ethan also out. They're talking about bringing in a crisis management team. I walked to the window, staring across the river at the Meridian Tower. 15 years of my life in that building. 15 years they thought could be erased with 7 cold words. Your services are no longer required. I hadn't set out to destroy Warren or Meridian. I had simply taken my value elsewhere. Built something better. Let natural consequences unfold. The most devastating revenge wasn't stealing clients or exposing mistakes. It was showing them, and myself, that I had always been the true source of their success. Without me, the weaknesses I'd covered for years were finally laid bare. Warren had believed Meridian was his creation, his legacy. Now he understood the truth. I hadn't worked for Meridian all those years. Meridian had worked because of me. My phone buzzed with an incoming email. The Mayo Clinic. Contract finalized, ready for signatures. The first major victory of many to come, not through destruction, but creation. Recognized finally for my true value, I signed the document and glanced once more at the Meridian building across the river. Its lights seemed dimmer, its presence less imposing. "Goodbye, Warren," I whispered. Your services are no longer required. Have you ever been underestimated, overlooked despite your contributions, replaced by someone less qualified but better connected? I'd love to hear your stories in the comments. What would you have done in my position? Taken Josephine's offer? Or tried something entirely different? How do you recover when a company you helped build decides you're dispensable? If this story resonated, subscribe for more raw, honest accounts of professional betrayal and sweet, well-earned justice. Sometimes, the most powerful revenge isn't destroying what hurt you, it's building something better from the ashes of what you lost.